Hey folks, Clyde Lindsay here at Xlights. Thanks for taking the time to be with me today. I'm doing a video today on Xlights, and I want to remind you to go to www.xlights.org and please click on the donate button and make a donation for the software that you're going to be using. Xlights is a phenomenal product that has no support other than those in the community, so please feel free to make a donation. So today's video is actually a response to a actual question that I got from an email through my Leechburg Lights page, and that question was, how do you sequence using only just the AC channels, like an LOR kind of setup? And what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to open up one of the sequences I did with nothing but AC channels and no RGB channels. So here is a pretty wild layout, and the reason why I'm going to use this specific person's layout is because there are multiple layers, and I want to show you how to begin building these multiple layers. So as you can see, we have a massive tree line here. There's two tree lines. We have a mega tree here, we have a mega tree here, and these are four color mega trees. So if I were to click on this, you'll see it says mega tree blue, green, red, and white. So I had to create four separate mega trees. Excuse me. Each mega tree had its own individual color, and then on top of that, I had to create that mega tree with the string properties down here. Let's see, it was a single color, and here's the number of strings. It has 12 strings on the mega tree, and it has 12 strings of red, 12 strings of white, 12 strings of green, and 12 strings of blue. Now the AC side, or kind of the LOR controller side of the hobby, is something that's still very viable and usable in Xlights. I actually wrote the entire sequence for Mr. Grinch in Xlights using only the individual single channels. None of these here are RGB. But the donation box I kind of sequenced as kind of an RGB channel. But there are floods. There were floodlights, and I did sequence those as RGB. But the rest of them all were grouped together. So what I want to do is I'll take you through the layout, and I'll show you, just like I did the mega tree here, the house and the tree lines, they all have four different custom models that I built. So we have this custom model right here. I clicked on create new custom model, and I physically hand drew these little trees in here, and so I'm going to open that up. This is the blue tree line. If I click here, it says model data. To edit, click this little button, and here's the physical model. There's 24 trees in this tree line, and I hand drew every one of these into there, and that made it so that I had each individual tree set up and available to sequence. So then, since these are all listed as the color blue and labeled as blue, I then copied this model, and since I have a line of green, a line of red, and a line of white, I just layered them on top of each other, as you can see here, and I kind of offset them a little bit. That's why it looks a little fuzzy, thick, or blurry, so that whenever I actually play the sequence, I can tell the difference in the colors, and obviously these aren't RGB colors, so they're not going to color mix the way that inherently they should mix. So what did I do after I did this? So I have there's four colors on the buildings here. There's four colors for the well, the floodlights are RGB. These are the little glowing lights there. The house outlines, those all have those all have 4 colors on them. The arches, I think those arches were standard single channel LOR arches. They were just 4 arches. Each arch had 8 segments, so 4 times 8 is 32, so there were 2 LOR controllers on here. Now, there's a lot to this sequence. There's a whole lot of channels in this sequence, but what's important to note is that once you have created your custom model for, let's say, this tree line, then what you can do after you've made your red, blue, green, and white version, then you can right-click in this setup dialog box, and you can add a group. Actually, it's not going to do it there. I'll do it right here. You can right-click and add group, and when you do, you can rename that group to whatever you need to rename it. I have a video that shows you how to do this. You can go ahead and click on that, or look it up in the page. I probably throw a link up there real quick. And then what I would do is I would begin building this this model, this model group, and adding the models that go into that group. So those 4 colors, the red, green, blue, and white, those are all in there. So that happens to be, this group here happens to be all 4 colors for this small tree here. And once that's done, then I go over to the sequencer tab, and then I right click and I go to edit display elements, and I create a view. Now once again, this is in that other video. I create a view, and by doing that I click on add, and I go through and I just add the groups. I don't add every individual single prop. And whenever I've added all of the groups of props, once that's done, I organize it. I go top to bottom with usually alphabetical in my own display, but this one I don't know how I laid his out. But I ended up using this, and if you double click on the group, it'll open up all the individuals. But see, when you sequence with LOR, you're sequencing with an individual channel. And so if I open up these floods, here is the individual channel, and I really don't feel like let me get a better, the floods are not a good one. Buildings. So these are the buildings. He has red buildings, green buildings, blue buildings, and white buildings. Okay, well now which buildings are we talking about? If we open up the individual model, we can see this is the red buildings. Double click, now we've got 6 different buildings. And do I really want to go down here and individually turn on and off the actual channel? No, it's best for me, in the way I think, is to come up here to the group level, and if I zoom in here, if I'm using the bars effect, and I'll pull down the sequence here so you can see it a little bit. If I hit the bars effect here across the buildings, what it's doing is it's sending the bars. I don't know how I have it. It's in the compression model, so it's going from the outside into the center. And I'm actually creating a chase towards the center of the property, but I'm not having to go in and individually program this side of the house, this side of the roof, this side of the roof, this side of the house. Excuse me, this side of the house, and then chase from here to here manually. I'm doing it using an effect that's creating it to, or telling it to all go that way. So whenever I do open up and I do double click, you can see the data is filled in for me. I don't have to go in and physically place the data to those specific places. So you can always utilize, if you can see here, you can always utilize this is fade down. This is the on command, and all this does is this is fading down, then fading down with green on the floods. You can always just use the on command, and just like you're used to doing in Xlights. But to be honest, it's so much easier if you do this at the group level. If you begin your sequencing in groups or in those custom models where I have multiple channels in the model, where you can see, like here we have 6 nodes, 1 through 6 nodes, or six different props. If we go back to let's go to the tree line. This is the large tree. See, here's some large trees. If I click on this model and bring down the little model preview. So here's one of the trees, and it's red, green, blue, and white, obviously, but each of these trees has 8 channels, and they start at the bottom and go to the top. 1 is at the bottom, and then 2 is at the top. So as you can see, this is the morph effect, and it's in essence creating a morph straight up the tree, because I'm starting with the first node, which is at the bottom, and it's chasing to the top. Now this makes sequencing a whole lot easier whenever you know how the effects work, or you can physically go in here and you can use the on command, and it's fade. I have it fading down, and then you highlight them all and you hold the Alt button and you click and you drag, and now you've created that chase. So now it's a little bit more, you have a little bit more of that LOR style of sequencing, which you can do because you're familiar with it. You just have to learn how to use it. Now, fortunately for me, I know how to work through all these nuances and so forth. But this is some of the things that when you're sequencing with some of the different effects in Xlights and you're using AC channels, this is one of the ways that you can think about it. Now, the other thing I'll mention is, yes, I'm sequencing at the group model, and I'm using the red color. Well, what about the rest of the colors that are, let's close this up there. What about the rest of these colors? Well, whenever you're using the physical color, it's only going to activate the channels that run off of that color. So now we know that red obviously is red, but what happens if we do another morph, and I'll throw that up there real quick, and let's change it to, let's change the color up here to purple. And let's click on that and just get rid of that. So now we have purple, and what does purple do? It's actually activating the red and the blue, and the reason that it's activating both colors is because to get the color purple, you have to turn on the red and the blue to make purple whenever you're making RGB color. So if I open up the red, you're going to see red's on, and then I open up the blue, you're going to see that the blue is on. If I go ahead and close those up, and then we have a look here at the green, you'll notice green's not on because we haven't created an effect which calls for the color green. Now, what if we do change this color to orange? Now all of a sudden we see that red and green are on. And when you mix in RGB land, when you mix red and green, you get the color orange. So now it's activating only the red and green to get that orange color, but it's not activating the blue. So those are the 3 colors. Now what if you want white? Okay, here's the trick. The challenge is whenever you have all white and you change this to, let's change this to all white. Now we're activating red, green, white, and blue. We're activating 4 channels, but we already know that we have this group called all white, or the standard. So what I learned was my secret whenever whenever I want to activate all white was I had a whole house white group. I created that group, and this was all of my white channels. When I wanted to smack white all over the place, I would, for example, right here, let me go delete this. I would, let's see, here's the house matrix, because I knew I was using a matrix. This was the matrix I was going against, and then on. So kind of like a little ping pong ball effect, or a twinkle. I think that's twinkle, and that was kind of nice. That worked out very well with that little fade there. And then let's see, there were other things too. The arches were white, so I used the white color for the arches only. There weren't red, blue, or green. And I think that was about it. I really tried to stay away from white. But I did have this one group. Whenever I did want to, I wanted to activate everything with white, I would just go to this whole house model here, and I would create, not the whole house model, but I go to the whole house white string. So everything that was white, I could activate very easily right here. Right here in this part of the song, this is the whole house whenever it was lit up with just that white that you see there, which created a neat little effect, and I mixed in some other colors with that if I bring down the house preview. So that was something that was a little different than normal. So I hope this helps get you wrapped around the idea that you can sequence with individual LOR controllers and still use the different effects. There's a good effect there. I'm color fading from red to blue, and or color washing, I should say, color wash. And I can still morph. I can use the morph. The morph effect is going from this side to this side. I have red attached to it, and I bet you I can make it a little more prominent if I go to the end and I change the head duration to a little bit less. And I bet you I could do, yeah, see, there it is. It comes up at the end there. So there's a lot of things that you can do. You can still use your normal sequencing in Xlights from the pixels, but you have to understand that there are limits whenever you are sequencing using 4 colors or 3 colors of RGB. And once again, this is just one way for you to kind of model or set up your own LOR display and begin creating the effects, the same things in Xlights, so that whenever you begin adding more and more pixel elements, that you're able to just jump in and start using the pixel elements and sequencing from Xlights. So folks, I hope this video is helpful. I hope it illustrates a couple good points for you. If you have any other questions, feel free to send me an email. I usually don't jump in and do videos, but whenever it's a great question and it's something I can walk through, then I'm happy to do it. So thanks for watching. Take care, folks, and look forward to hearing from you again soon. Leave your comments down below. Take care.